Everyone, it's Mrs. Burdick, the reading coach. I'm here to share another fiction book today. And as we read the fiction book today, I want you to think about a strategy called Somebody Wanted But So Then. Let's go over what each of those words mean and why I want you to think about it as we read our book today. So the somebody is the main character. Who is that story even about? And this fits any fiction book that you read. Wanted. What is the main character trying to do, or what do they want in the story? Here's a big one. But what is the problem? What is keeping the main character from achieving whatever it is that they want? So, how is that problem solved? Then, how does the story end, or what is the conclusion of the story? So, this is a strategy that can be used for any fiction text. And it's great to be thinking about those elements, the somebody wanted but so then. As you read any text, then you can easily write a summary, very quick, about what you read. Now, the text I'm going to read today is I Hate English, and it's written by Ellen Levine, and the illustrations are by Steve Bjorkman. I hate English, Mei Mei said in her head, in Chinese. Mei Mei was smart in school, in her school, in Hong Kong, in Chinese. But her family moved to New York. She didn't know why. She didn't want to move. And she said all that in Chinese. Chinatown in New York was okay. People looked like people she knew. People talked like people she knew in Chinese. In New York, in school, everything happened in English. Such a lonely language. Each letter stands alone and makes its own noise, not like Chinese. Sometimes English letters fight each other. We will go on a class trip, the teacher said, in English. T-R-I-P, thought Mei Mei. The letters T and R bang against each other, and each keeps its own sound, not like Chinese. Mei Mei loved Chinese, especially writing. Fast strokes, short strokes, long strokes, the brush, the pen, the pencil, all seemed to fly in her hand. But that was Chinese. Mei Mei wouldn't speak in school. Most of the time she understood what her teacher said, but everything was in English, and Mei Mei wouldn't speak English. One day, her cousin Bing took her to Chinatown Learning Center. Students brought their homework for help, but not Mei Mei. She wouldn't work in English. Tutors helped the older ones with their English. Mei Mei helped the little ones with arithmetic. She was good at arithmetic. Numbers weren't English or Chinese. They were just numbers. Mei Mei loved the center. She talked and listened and explained and argued. She did everything in Chinese. She helped the director set up the tables. She played ping pong and checkers. She sang songs. She wrote letters to friends in Hong Kong, all in Chinese. Dear Yifang, she wrote in Chinese, how would you like me to visit you? She laughed as she finished the letter. Then she had to write the address in English. Silly post office in New York, she thought. Why can't they read in Chinese? Mei Mei had a dream. She thought about it at least once a day, sometimes twice or three times. She told Bing about it in Chinese. All the gang, Bing and Mona and Shek and Leo and Anne, would go on a plane to Hong Kong. On the plane, everybody would speak Chinese. Instead, they went to Jones Beach with the director. Mei Mei and her friends rode on 3 trains and 1 bus. They brought lunch, bathing suits, towels, and empty pails. The trip took 2 hours and they talked and joked the whole way in Chinese. Leo and Bing buried themselves in the sand. Anne and Mona built a castle on top of them. Sheck, said Maymay, let's dig for shellfish. And off they went with their pails. You can't eat those, said the lifeguard. Maymay smiled and kept on digging. He probably doesn't know how to cook them, Sheck said in Chinese. She was right. The director made a fire in the picnic area and cooked the shellfish. Nobody said a word. Everybody was busy, very busy, eating. At last, Maymay looked up and said, delicious, in Chinese. And then one day, a terrible thing happened. A teacher came to the Learning Center to help Maymay with English. Who was this person with short hair and blue eyes? And why was she smiling? Maymay was afraid. She wouldn't speak a word in English or in Chinese. Hello, I'm Nancy, the person said. She pointed to an empty table. Let's sit down. Maymay understood the teacher's English. The teacher had a book, and she read a story. Maymay forgot that she didn't want to listen. The story was interesting, even if it was in English. It was about a boy who lived in New York more than 100 years ago. His family wanted to move to California. Maymay knew about California. She smiled to herself as she thought about California in Chinese. The teacher read on. The family crossed the country in a covered wagon. Covered wagon, thought Maymay. She didn't know the words for covered wagon in Chinese. Maymay didn't want to hear anymore. She didn't want English to have words that she didn't know in Chinese. She felt sad, and a tear slid down her cheek. She didn't want the teacher to see, but the teacher did see and said, let's stop for today in English. That night in bed, Maymay felt dread and afraid again. She wasn't sure why. She felt she might lose something. She felt she had lost something, and she felt she would lose something. Good night, her mother said in Chinese. Good night, answered Maymay without thinking, in English. And then she fell into a deep sleep. She dreamt about Hong Kong. In the dream, she went to see Yi Fong. But Yi Fong said, who are you? In English. Who am I? Dreamt Maymay. I don't even remember my name. She woke up shouting, I am Maymay in Chinese. The next day, Maymay was mad. She stared at the teacher. She glared at the teacher. And then she said, I don't care to the teacher in English. Very good, said Nancy. I knew you could speak English. But I don't think you really want to learn, Nancy continued. And that's too bad. Why is it too bad, thought Maymay in Chinese. The teacher seemed to read her mind. Because in America, everything happens in English. Don't you want to go to an American movie? Don't you want to ask for pizza? Don't you want to have an ice cream cone? Don't you want to read the signs at the zoo? Don't you want to talk with me? I want to talk to you, said Nancy in English. Maymay turned away. She wanted to tell Nancy that she liked her, but all she could say was, I'm sorry, in English. Nancy suddenly jumped up. Get your coat, she said to Maymay. We are going to take a walk. Maymay said goodbye to Sheck in Chinese. On the street, a strange thing happened. Nancy didn't ask Maymay to talk. Nancy didn't care if Maymay talked. Nancy didn't want Maymay to talk. Nancy was talking in English. She told Maymay about her third grade teacher. She told Maymay about her favorite book. She told Maymay that she loved tomatoes and potatoes. She told Maymay about Mr. Schwartz, her dog. She told Maymay everything, it seemed, in English. Maymay thought about her school. She thought about her favorite book. She thought about char siu bao, her favorite food. And she thought about sui fa, her cat, in Chinese. But Nancy wouldn't stop talking. She went on and on forever talking, yelled Maymay in English. Nancy didn't seem to hear her. She kept on talking. She started reading the store signs. She read the names forwards and backwards. Sang Ping became Nip Nas. Maymay became Lem Lem. Still, Nancy talked in English. Stop, cried Maymay. She couldn't stand it any more. She felt invisible. I want to talk, she shouted in English. And before she could think about what she was doing, Maymay began. She talked about Children's Day in Hong Kong. You get lots of presents. She talked about the dragon dances on Chinese New Year. She talked about her street in Hong Kong and all her friends nearby. She talked for 22 minutes without stopping in English. Nancy was laughing. And as Maymay talked, Nancy laughed more and more. Maymay started to smile. Then she laughed a little, and then she shook with laughter. They both laughed so hard neither one could say a word in English or Chinese. Thank you, said Nancy as she gave Maymay a hug. For what? Asked Maymay, still laughing. For giving me, said Nancy, a present of English. You are welcome, said Maymay. And to this day, Maymay talks in Chinese and in English whenever she wants. All right, boys and girls. Now remember, after you hear either me read a story or you read a story, or you're listening to online to maybe storylineonline.net or maybe Tumble Books, I want you to think about somebody wanted but so then. And that helps organize the story for you so that you can write a quick summary. Remember, if you do a summary of I Hate English, please have an adult take a picture of the summary or add it to your packet of work that you're going to be bringing back to school next week. Remember, read, read, read. That's the best practice for fluency. And now we can take AR test at home. So you can find I Hate English in the AR search. Take an AR test. All right, guys. I am so glad that you had me come share a book with you today. And I will see you next time. This is Mrs. Burdick out.